Good morning and welcome back to my channel. So as you saw from last week's video, I have recently found out that I am pregnant with baby number 2. It is so exciting. Finding out I was pregnant was a bit of a shock. I talked about it in my finding out we're pregnant video, but it was just earlier than we expected, than we had planned, and happened very fast. So it was just a little bit unexpected, but now that we've had a few weeks for it to sink in, we are both so excited. Can't wait to welcome our future baby into the world. And I actually wanted to just sit down and share a little bit about actually how I knew I was pregnant, some early pregnancy symptoms that I had. I know a lot of women are curious about this, especially when they're trying to conceive. So I just wanted to actually share a little bit about my experience and some of the symptoms that I have been having thus far. I am currently a little over 7 weeks pregnant, so I actually had my appointment last week with my OBGYN and confirmed that the pregnancy is viable. Baby has a heartbeat, has the yolk sac, the gestational sac, and all of that good stuff. So confirmed all of that. It was actually a very early appointment, and the reason for that is because I actually have not had a menstrual cycle since giving birth to my first child, and so because of that, my OB was like not really sure how far along I was and wanted to get me in sooner than later to make sure I wasn't like super far along, basically. So I actually am gonna have another ultrasound in like 3 weeks to double check the due date and gestational age, just to make sure that it's still pretty aligned with what they saw last week's appointment. So with all that being said, let's talk about how I knew I was pregnant and some of those super early symptoms that I had leading into my positive pregnancy test. So the first thing I wanted to say actually is that this is obviously, again, my second pregnancy, and I do think that I probably wouldn't have noticed some of these symptoms if I wasn't aware of them from my first pregnancy, if I wasn't kind of paying attention to where I was at within my ovulation cycle. So I also wanted to say that I came off birth control and I started tracking my ovulation with the little easy at home ovulation test strips. My plan was to, like, instead of using traditional birth control, I felt like I had been on a bunch of hormones for a long time. I wanted to kind of have a natural cycle again. I guess my 2 cents, if you want to do that and avoid getting pregnant, is to use a second form of birth control during that first month while you get your kind of rhythm back, because we did not use the second form and that's how we ended up pregnant. So because I was kind of tracking my ovulation, that's how I knew when I ovulated, and that's how I knew when I should kind of expect to potentially take a pregnancy test. I swear to you, I felt implantation. It was roughly 6 DPO, and I just felt like a little bit of light cramping, almost like twinging, pulling type of feeling right in the middle of my uterus. And I was like, I kind of feel like that is implantation, but I guess we'll find out in a couple of weeks, or in like a week. I remember around 10 DPO, I started actually having a couple of cravings. I was at one of my friends' baby showers. They had done like a brunch breakfast buffet, and I actually was like craving the breakfast sausage, which is unlike me. I normally am like more of like a sweets breakfast type of person. Like I want waffles and pancakes, and maybe I'll have like some bacon or something, but I don't usually like breakfast sausage. And I smelled the breakfast sausage and I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta have some of that. Like I really want breakfast sausage. And that actually triggered a thought in my mind. I remember thinking, that's odd, because again, I remember from my first pregnancy, like really craving like salty meats at the very beginning. I remember craving like salami and that type of thing. And I, in that moment, was like, that's odd. Like that's something I remember from my first pregnancy. The next day I was actually traveling back from Washington back home, and I remember having to go to the bathroom a lot while I was traveling. So that was another thing that I was like, that's interesting. And then the following day was like a Tuesday, I think, and that was when I was expecting my menstrual cycle based on the timing of my ovulation. And so I was like, I'm gonna take a test this morning, and lo and behold, it was positive. So my super early symptoms was like, I definitely feel like I had the implantation cramping around 6 DPO, and then I started craving like salty meats around 10-11 DPO, and like having to pee a lot. Those were like my super early symptoms. From then on, I Let's see, I actually wrote down some notes so I wouldn't forget. Oh, the other thing that was really interesting was I was getting some hot flashes at that really early stage, like 10, 11 DPO. And I remember thinking like the only other time in my life that I've had hot flashes was like pregnancy, postpartum, like when my hormones were kind of crazy. And so that was another kind of red flag to me of like, oh, I wonder if my hormones are crazy right now because I'm pregnant. Other than that, like from like weeks 4 through even towards like the end of last week, so like 4 through 7 mostly have been very, very tired, like so exhausted. I'm not usually a napper. I find it hard to nap, and I have been taking a nap like pretty much every day, going to bed really early, sometimes falling asleep on the couch while my husband and I are watching a movie at like 8 p.m. That's just unlike me. So that's like a very telltale sign for me. I've had a lot of lower back pain. I've had some headaches kind of coming and going. And I will also say this also happened in my first pregnancy, probably around 6 weeks, was the nips specifically for me started hurting really bad. Not as much like the boobs in general, just more of like the nips. Sorry if that's TMI, but that is a very specific symptom for me. Towards the end of week 6 into week 7, I've actually had, I don't know if you can really see it on this camera, but I've had some chest acne popping up. That was something that happened in my first pregnancy as well. Chest acne specifically, I don't know why on my chest, but for some reason that's where I have been getting acne. And also some shortness of breath when I'm trying to like have these long conversations on videos or going up and down the stairs. My shortness of breath is pretty crazy. And then just within these last couple of days, I personally have just started to get a little bit of nausea. It hasn't been that bad for me. It's been pretty manageable. So hoping that it kind of stays in a manageable state. But I haven't had any crazy nausea, so I know it's very different for everyone. But that's pretty much it. I actually haven't had like a ton of super crazy symptoms. It's mostly fatigue right now, a little bit of nausea, and then some of those other things like shortness of breath, the nips, the acne, all pretty much pretty manageable. But I do think, you know, it's worth mentioning that those super early symptoms, again, were things that I don't think I would have picked up on, you know, craving sausage or having to pee or even the hot flashes if it wasn't something that I remember feeling from my first pregnancy. So anyways, I hope that that helps anybody out there that is curious about early pregnancy symptoms. If I could give you a piece of advice, it would just be to try and be really in tune with your body, and that way when little changes happen, it's a little bit easier to pick up on them. But anyways, I hope you guys found this video useful if you are trying to conceive and curious about super early pregnancy symptoms. If you liked this video, make sure you hit the thumbs up button, and if you want to follow along my pregnancy journey, make sure you hit the subscribe button as well. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch up with you next time.